guys, Caleb here, back again with more Red Knot, and this time we have Candy Cane Murder by Joanne Fluke, which is technically a novella because there are two other stories included in this one, which are The Dangers of Candy Canes by Laura Levine, Candy Canes of Christmas Past by Leslie Meyer. So I don't know if I'll read the novellas, even though they are chaptered. If you want me to read them, I will. Otherwise, these books are going in my donation for Christmas, or to get more books, or something. So the cover is the same thing as the last cover. It is bland and boring as shit. The only thing is, it's super shiny, and I really like the candy canes, which are tied with a green bow, and there's a little skull on the green bow. And that's it. 'Tis the season of trimming the tree, caroling, baking cookies, and curling up by the Yuletide, waiting for Santa to drop down the chimney. But in this festive collection of holiday whodunits, murder is also paying a visit. Candy Cane Murder by Joanne Fluke. When a trail of candy canes leads to a corpse outfitted in a Santa suit on a snowy bank, Hannah Swenson sets out to discover who killed Kris Kringle. The Dangers of Candy Canes by Laura Levine. A wealthy suburbanite takes a lethal tumble off his roof while installing a giant candy cane. Now it's up to Janie Austen, I see what you did there, to sift through a long list of scheming neighbors with dirty secrets in their stockings to expose a murderer. Candy Canes of Christmas Past by Leslie Meyer. Lucy Stone must learn the mystery of a glass candy cane that was found smashed to bits by a corpse's body to unlock the doors of Christmas Past and find a killer who got away with murder. Whether it's a gift for yourself or that special someone on your list, there's no better way to spend the holidays than with these tantalizing mysteries of murder. Includes over 10 scrumptious holiday recipes. Why only 10? Because we put other author filler into this book. So again, if you want me to read the other two stories for Red Knot, just let me know. I might do it anyway, but it would be nice to have some feedback. Chapter 1. It was a dream. One of those bizarre fantasies she'd laugh about when she woke up. But not even in her worst nightmare had Hannah Swenson ever imagined she'd be transformed into an elf. Are you ready, Aunt Hannah? It wasn't a dream. That was Tracy's voice. Hannah mouthed a word she hoped was in her 6-year-old niece's vocabulary, and then she answered the question. I'll be out in a couple of minutes, honey. The holiday season calls for a generosity of spirit, Hannah reminded herself, as she pulled on bright green tights and struggled into the matching tunic top. The bottom hem of the tunic had long points of cloth, attached like screaming red pennants, hanging down around her waist. I don't know what pennants are. Each one was tipped with the jingle bell, so if by some miracle someone failed to notice her, the bells would announce her presence. Her footwear was next. Hannah pulled on slippers with roll-up toes, and a shade of red so bright it hurt her eyes. She topped it all off with a pointed cap with more jingle bells in the same brilliant red, and avoided the mirror with the same dedication Transylvanian villagers had used to ward off vampires. Aunt Hannah? I'm almost ready, Tracy. What's the matter? You sound funny. Elves are supposed to sound funny, aren't they? Hannah tugged down the bright red points on her tunic. Perhaps it would stretch out and fit a little better. I guess. Better hurry, Aunt Hannah. It's 6:56, and Santa's supposed to be here at 7:00. Right. Hannah gave a fleeting thought to how much she missed the big hands and little hands on analog watches, and risked a glance at the mirror. Her image hadn't changed for the better. The red of her hair was engaged in a full-scale war with the red of her cap. Women who were more than 2 pounds overweight should avoid form-fitting tunics, with bells that called attention to their figure faults, and with the possible exception of those who had fitness club memberships and actually used them. Women over 30 should be wary about skipping in public. It was Santa who was supposed to jiggle like a bowl full of jelly, not her. Aunt Hannah, coming. Hannah tore her eyes away from the wreckage of her self-esteem. If a dozen determined designers had gotten together for the sole purpose of creating an outfit that would be most unflattering for her, they couldn't have done a better job. She took a deep breath, grabbed the basket of miniature candy canes she would stew like rose petals in Santa's wake, and opened the dressing-room door. All thoughts of how dreadful she looked were erased as she caught sight of Tracy's beaming face. Playing Santa's elf for an hour wouldn't kill her, and since the large silver basket she was carrying had to contain at least 1,000 miniature candy canes, there was an upside to the evening. She'd have plenty of candy left over to make chocolate candy cane cookies at the Cookie Jar, her bakery and coffee shop tomorrow, because you wouldn't have your own candy canes or anything of the such. "You're perfect, Aunt Hannah," Tracy said, taking her aunt's hand. "All the kids are going to love you." And with that vote of supreme confidence, Hannah and her niece headed for the temporary stage that had been erected in the dining room of Lake Eden Inn to wait for Santa to arrive. "I see Mom," Tracy said, peeking through the crack in the curtain. "And Aunt Michelle's here, too. They're getting the kids lined up." Hannah walked over to take a look. She spotted her 2 younger sisters waiting in line with the children from the Winnetka County Children's Home. They had been bussed out for an early dinner and a gift from Wayne Bergenson, who was playing Santa tonight. The children would go back to the home right after the visit with Santa, and then the adult Christmas party would begin. Tracy glanced at her watch. It's 7:13, and Santa Wayne isn't here yet. I wonder why he's late. "I don't know," Hannah answered, "but make sure you don't call him Santa Wayne in front of the kids. You know that Wayne is one of Santa's temporary helpers at Christmas time, but the other kids don't." "Don't worry, Aunt Hannah, I won't tell." "Ah, I see. She told the little kid the same lie I told my friend's little brother when he was determined to pull Santa's beard. I think I might have told this before, but I'll tell it again, just in case. When we were much younger, the place where I live had a Christmas party for the residents, and we went, I and my friend and her little brother went to enjoy the caroling and the hot chocolate and cookies. You know, basically we went for food. She brought her little brother, who was, I want to say, maybe 5 or so at the time. I don't really remember how old he was. Then we had Santa Claus, and he was determined to show everybody that that was fake, that that was not really Santa Claus. It just came to me in that moment, and I bent down and I told him, "You're right, that's not really Santa Claus." And my friend, she's about to go ballistic on me. She's like, what are you trying to do and say? It's like, I'm trying to make him believe in Santa Claus. And I looked at her. I'm like, no, go, giving her a silent signal. I'm like, no, let me do this. Go with me here. Let me have my say. And I continued to tell him that, but you see, there are a lot of kids in this world, all over the place, more than we've ever seen in our entire life. And that means Santa is a very, very busy person. He really doesn't have the time to leave the North Pole to visit everyone. So instead, what Santa really does is he has people in every part of the world do this for him. But the thing is, you wouldn't just tell a random person what you want for Christmas, even if they said they were going to give it to Santa Claus for you. So to help encourage the kids to tell them what they want for Christmas, they dress up as Santa Claus. And so no, they're not really Santa Claus, but they're helping Santa. And to like a 5-year-old, that made perfect sense. I asked him years later if he remembered that. He's like, yeah, I remember that. I'm like, well, what about your belief in Santa? He's like, I had it for about a year or two more after you told me that. But he's like, I know now. And I'm like, well, your sister was trying to convince you, and it just came to me to say that. He's like, well, it was really convincing. I believed it. If you have a little kid, or maybe if you have a younger sibling, tell them something like that if they are dead set convinced that somebody isn't Santa Claus, and they're going to ruin Santa for everybody else. Hannah took another peek through the slit in the curtains. The children in line were beginning to fidget. If Wayne didn't get here soon, Michelle and Andrea would have an insurrection on their hands. And then it happened. Both Hannah and Tracy began to smile as they heard sleigh bells in the distance. From previous Christmas parties like the Lake Eden Inn, Hannah knew that Wayne carried a half-dozen sleigh bells attached to a red leather strap. They usually resided in one of the big patch pockets of his Santa costume. But he took them out when he came in the kitchen door and jingled them to build anticipation for his arrival, and as a signal for his elf to join him in the kitchen. Hannah took one last look at the line of children. All talking, coughing, and wiggling had ceased. Instead, there was silence, perfect stillness of voice and body, large and small, and every face wore an expectant smile. Santa was coming, and even the teenagers who had seemed so jaded and blasé, only moments before, were now caught in the grips of heady expectancy. Better take your place, Tracy, Hannah whispered, giving her niece a little push toward the throne-like chair where Wayne would sit. Since some of the little ones had been afraid of the big red-suited man with the white fur and the booming voice in years past, Sally had asked Tracy to stand next to Santa and reassure them. When Tracy had taken up her position, looking like an angel with her shining blonde hair and white velvet dress, Hannah gave a little wave and headed off to the kitchen. Her least favorite part of the evening was about to begin, the part where she skipped behind Santa and scattered cellophane wrapper candy canes as he wound his way through the crowded dining room and up the steps to the stage. Where Santa reached the top step, the curtains would open to reveal Tracy, Santa's throne, and the huge decorated Christmas tree. And once Wayne was seated and his elf had navigated the steps and taken her place by the Christmas tree, Michelle and Andrea would bring the children up one by one to greet Santa and receive their presents. When she pushed open the swinging kitchen door, Hannah spotted Santa Wayne at the counter, perched on a stool and drinking something in a cup. Sally stood next to him, frowning. Something's wrong, something wrong? Hannah asked her. Something's wrong? Something is wrong, but she's asking this as a question. Drop the apostrophe S and then you'll have it correctly. Hannah asked her, and it came out more statement than question. Of course something was wrong. Sally wouldn't be frowning if everything were perfectly all right. Wayne's got laryngitis, and my hot peppermint tea isn't working. We're afraid he'll scare the kids when he talks to them. Hannah realized that was possible, especially if Santa sounded gruff. I could make an announcement. What kind of announcement? Santa Wayne asked in a rasping voice that left no question about his ability to speak in normal tones. I could tell the kids that you ran into some thick fog over Greenland and you had to sing Jingle Bells really loud so your voice would bounce off the ice caps and Donner and Blitzen wouldn't fly into them. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Santa Wayne rasped. Hannah shrugged. I know, but I think it'll work. Do you want me to do it? Why not just tell them Santa has a cold, but he'll be okay in time for Christmas, don't worry. Santa Wayne and Sally exchanged glances. I guess it's better than nothing, she said, settling the question. Smile, scatter left, scatter right, Hannah told herself, trying not to pant as she skipped. She'd only covered about half the distance, and she was already out of breath. puffing faster than the caterpillar smoking a hookah in Tracy's volume of Alice in Wonderland. Why do I need to know she has a copy of Alice in Wonderland? Why couldn't you just make the Alice in Wonderland reference? Uh-oh. There was Mike, her sometime boyfriend. Who's really sometimes your boyfriend, or you just want him to be your boyfriend? And also, why would you say sometime instead of sometimes? Hannah put on the biggest smile she could muster and tried to pretend she was having the time of her life. Because when I see the guy I like, the first thing I do is fake it. The fact that those portions of her anatomy she often wished were smaller and firmer were bouncing up and down and sideways like a loose bar of soap in a shower stall didn't help. No one who saw her could possibly call her graceful. The best she could hope for was that they might consider her a good sport. Her petunias and Roxy's weren't behaving. Only a few more yards to go. Hannah concentrated on skipping forward and peppering her audience with candy canes. At least she finally figured out why the green leggings she wore were called tights. It was because they were tight. Well, yes, they hug your body. Extremely tight. If they're that tight, they're too small for you. So very tight that she felt like a sausage about to split open on a blazing hot barbecue grill. Okay, you're using a few too many metaphors. The ordeal was almost over, and Hannah stopped to toss another few candy canes as Wayne climbed the steps to the stage. Then the curtains opened, and the audience applauded as he gave Tracy a smile and sat down in his chair. He patted his knee, and Tracy climbed on to whisper in his ear. It was a sweet and heartwarming scene, and Hannah was grateful that everyone in the audience was watching Santa with Tracy as she climbed the steps to the stage and took her place to do what her grandma Ingrid had always called speak her piece. Santa almost didn't make it tonight. Hannah spoke the words she'd been rehearsing in her head. So let's give him a big round of applause to show how glad we are he made it here to the Lake Eden Inn. The audience broke into loud applause, and once it had diminished in volume, Hannah continued with her story. Do you know that there was an awful storm at the North Pole when Santa started his Christmas journey? No! Several children shouted, and Hannah gave them a smile. There was, believe me. Santa didn't think he was going to make it, but do you know how he did it? No! This time the response was louder, and Hannah went into her story about the polar ice caps and the fog as heavy as green pea soup. So Santa had to sing all the way to the coast of Newfoundland to keep his reindeer from crashing into the ice caps. This is the stupidest fucking story. Just say Santa has a cold, but managed to make it. And he sang so loudly and so long he strained his voice. The younger children in line were nodding gravely. They believed her. Just as she known they would. Would you like to hear how funny Santa sounds? She asked. There was a clamor of yeses, and not all of them came from the children. Some of the adults were getting into the spirit of the evening, too. Would you please say ho, ho, ho for us, Santa? She requested, turning toward him. Ho, ho, ho! Santa Wayne exclaimed hoarsely, and some of the children giggled. That drew a good-natured laugh from the adults, and Hannah figured she'd done her part. There was only one more thing to mention. So you won't be afraid of Santa's stretchy voice, will you? No. Several children shouted, and almost all of them shook their heads. Her mission was accomplished, and Hannah skipped over to take her place next to the mound of color-coded presents. The Santa, Tracy, and Elf show was about to begin. Why not just be like, excuse Santa for sounding like he screamed his head off. He's sick. Hannah and Tracy knew the drill. They'd even rehearsed it with Sally. Hannah would hand Tracy the appropriate present. Tracy would carry it to Santa, and Santa would give it to the child on his lap. Norman Rhodes, Hannah's other boyfriend, because I needed to know you had another boyfriend, would snap a picture for prosperity. Then Michelle would escort the child to the rear of the line as Andrea brought the next child forward. The smallest children were at the front of the line, and Hannah studied the mound of presents. They were arranged by age group. All she had to do was work from left to right, and everyone would get an age-appropriate present. The packages were also color-coded. If they were wrapped with gold and green paper, they were for the girls. The boys got presents wrapped with silver and red paper. The next few minutes were busy. Hannah chose the gifts, Tracy gave them to Santa, and Santa presented them. Yes, we know. You just told us how this worked. We don't need a reiteration. The children were delighted, and Hannah was really getting into the spirit of the season by the time she picked up the last present. It was over, and she hadn't died of mortification. Perhaps the mirror in Sally's dressing room had waved the wrong way, and caused her to look larger than she actually was. Or maybe you're just more self-conscious about yourself than you initially thought. And perhaps all that skipping had jumbled her brain and affected her ability to separate reality from wishful thinking. There was standing applause as the children, all of them clutching their presents, were led out the door to their waiting bus, and then the curtains closed, and Hannah fanned herself with her tasseled cap. Except for a few dropped candy canes and one toddler who would absolutely not sit on Santa's lap and screamed bloody murder despite Tracy's, Hannah's, Andrea's, Michelle's, and Santa's best efforts, all had gone smoothly. Sally was waiting for them in the wings, and she handed Santa Wayne another cup of hot tea. That was even better than last year. Sip some tea, Wayne. Your throat must hurt from talking to the kids. Thanks, hurts. His voice was as scratchy as sandpaper, and he gave a rattling cough. I don't like the sound of that, Sally told him, and then she turned to Hannah and Tracy. You were wonderful, Tracy, and Hannah, your speech about Santa's sore throat was just the thing. Whatever, Hannah said, waving off the compliment, even though she thought it had been pretty good herself. Why would you say whatever to that? I'd just been like, no problem, don't worry about it. Here's your recipe for the presents, Wayne. Sally passed him a folded sheet of paper. Mayor Bascomb, Bascomb? B-A-S-C-O-M-B, did it through the Lake Eden boosters this year. My receipt? Oh, the receipt. I read that as recipe. I was wondering. Here's your receipt for the presents, Wayne. Sally passed him a folded sheet of paper. Mayor Bascomb did it through the Lake Eden boosters this year. My receipt? You know, the one you need for your corporate taxes. Mayor Bascomb said to tell your accounting department that the boosters got their nonprofit status in June last year. He'll fax you a copy of the paperwork for your files. Right. He shoved the receipt in his pocket and turned to Hannah. I'll need the rest of that candy. I'm playing Santa at the store tomorrow. What a cheapskate! Hannah thought, and being a cheapskate was probably how rich people got rich in the first place. No, that's how you save money. That's not how you become rich. Also, you were going to take it for yourself, so what are you talking about, cheapskate? Wayne Bergenstorm owned Bergenstorm's department store, the busiest and most profitable retailer at the Tri-County Mall. He had displays of miniature candy canes at every checkout counter, the tubs stacked one on top of the other like red and white striped pyramids. There was no reason he needed to take what Hannah had come to think of as her leftovers. Here, Hannah said, handing over the basket. It's her basket, he said, gesturing to Sally. Dump the candy in my pocket. Then he held open one of the massive pockets on the jacket of his Santa suit and waited for Hannah to dump them in. I'll drop off the elf costume at the store tomorrow unless you want it now, Hannah told him. It'll only take me a couple of minutes to change. Keep it. We couldn't sell it anyway now that you stretched it out. You can use it again next year. No flying pigs around here, Hannah muttered just under her breath. This guy's kind of a dickbag. And she was rewarded by a startled chortle from Sally. When Sally had asked her if she would be Wayne's regular elf for future Christmas parties, at the Lake Eden Inn, Hannah had responded with, "Sure, when pigs fly." With Sally struggling to maintain her composure, Hannah was just searching around for a topic of polite conversation when Sally's husband Dick walked up. "Good job, Wayne." Dick clapped him on the back. "The kids loved you. Go change down your suit, and I'll mix you a peppermint martini." "Tempting, but not tonight," he answered in his husky voice. "Got to rest my throat." "Hot water, honey, and lemon," Hannah advised him. "It's like making hot lemonade. Then pour a little brandy on top of it, with grated nutmeg. Does the brandy help?" he asked her, clearing his throat with obvious difficulty. "Not really. Your throat still hurts just as much, but after 3 or 4 cups, you don't care anymore." Makes me think of that part in, which one was it? It's the one in the Savannah Ride series where Dirk got a cold, and John and Ryan showed up, and I think it was John just threw a whole bunch of shit into a mixer and made Dirk drink it. And Savannah's like, "Is that really going to cure him?" And Ryan, who was the one who had the concoction first a few weeks ago when he was sick, told her, "Well, if it doesn't cure his cold, in the morning he won't care because he'll be so hungover all he'll think about is his headache." Chapter 2. Hannah gave one more glance in the mirror, and this time she smiled. Claire Rogers, her business neighbor on Main Street, had chosen Hannah's party outfit from her selection at Beau Monde Fashions. Claire and Hannah had worked out a barter system in the 2 years they'd been neighbors. Hannah dropped in with cookies for Claire, and Claire sold Hannah fashionable clothing at her cost. Tonight's outfit was a color Hannah had always wanted to wear, one she thought of as lavender blue, the title of one of her grandmother's favorite folk songs. Which, in case you didn't know, yes, that song sung by that guy in the 50s is actually a folk song. I think he changed the lyrics a little bit, but yeah, it's pretty much the same song. She'd always assumed it would clash with her hair, but Claire had urged her to try it on, and it worked perfectly. The romantic lines of the long draped jacket hid 2 of her huge faults, and the black silk pants emphasized her height and made her look thinner. Stop obsessing over your weight. See, this is why I really like Savannah Ride. Savannah's like, "Yeah, I'm fat. So what?" And then that's all she doesn't talk about it anymore. One last smoothing pat to the curls she'd given up trying to tame while she was still in grade school, and Hannah was ready for the party. She turned to look at the elf costume still hanging on a hook. Wayne had told her she could have it, but she knew she'd never wear it again unless someone had a gun to her head. Or maybe next Christmas when you're an elf again. And even then she might take several months to think it over. If she left it there behind the door, perhaps someone would take it before the night was over, someone who'd enjoy it. Someone who didn't have bright red hair and 10 extra pounds around the middle. Who gives a fucking shit? Stop worrying about it. You're just gonna get older and fatter. It doesn't matter how much you bitch about it. "How you doing, Hannah?" a voice greeted her as she stepped out of the dressing room, and Hannah turned to see Corey Reynolds, Wayne Bergstorm's brother-in-law, leaning up against the wall. Since there was no other reason he'd be in this particular hallway, he was obviously waiting for her. "Fine, Corey. How about you?" Hannah put a smile on. "Fine, Corey. How are you?" Hannah put on a smile. Corey was a nice enough guy, and it wasn't his fault that his sister had married a rich tightwad like Wayne. "Things are good. I just wanted to tell you that the story you told about how Wayne lost his voice was great." "Thanks. I was hoping it would work. Wayne sounded awful." "I know. He's even worse now. I ran into him outside the back door, and he said he was going straight home to have some of that hot lemonade and brandy you told him about." "Good. It should make him feel better." "I really didn't think he'd be able to do Santa tonight. I even offered to take over, but he wouldn't have it." "Too bad you didn't. said the voice in Hannah's head, because maybe you would have given me the rest of those candy canes. Why are you obsessing over this? Go get your own candy canes. You have a bakery, surely you got some somewhere in the back. Or can at least order them. But that was mean-spirited, and this was Christmas season. She could afford to be a little charitable. Has Wayne been hoarse all day? She asked. Corey shook his head. He was fine at noon. We had a manager's meeting at the store during lunch. You mean you had to give up your lunch break? Yeah, but at least it was on a weekday. Sometimes we have managers' meetings on Saturdays or Sundays. Wayne says that anyone who's not willing to come in 24/7 will never be a manager at Bergstorm's. I bet that makes him really popular, Hannah muttered. But she must have said it a little louder than she thought, because Corey gave a startled bark of laughter. Wasn't there a startled thing of laughter in the last book? It doesn't put him in the top 10 for Best Bosses of the Year award, but it's like he always says, it's his money and it's his store. He can run it any way he wants to. What department do you manage? Hannah continued to make polite conversation. Simply because, she wouldn't possibly be interested in this crap. Wonderful weddings. I moved there last year from men's clothing. We book weddings and provide everything the wedding party needs. Oh, well, you should have been there for the last book. That would have totally been helpful. Sounds nice, Hannah said, wondering why Corey had chosen to talk to her. Perhaps he was just lonely now that Wayne had left, or maybe he's into your stupid ass. So tell me about Wayne's laryngitis, she prompted. Sally said he could barely talk when he came in the kitchen door. That figures. He called me around 5:30 on my cell phone, and he was already pretty hoarse. I had to ask him to repeat himself a couple of times, and it didn't exactly make him happy. That's when I asked him if he wanted me to take over for him at the party. Hannah heard Sally's voice over the loudspeaker. Why wouldn't you put a suddenly, or have him trail off and then say that, so that we understand a little more clearly that the conversation's been interrupted, instead of you just randomly changing subjects. Inviting everyone to come to the buffet tables. Corey heard it too, and he extended his arm. Shall we, Hannah? Absolutely. Thank you, Corey. Hannah took his arm, and hoped he hadn't heard her stomach growl as they headed off to join the line for the buffet. Can I come too? I'm hungry. No? Okay. Sally's dessert buffet was splendoriferous. You had to invent a word for this? Really, you couldn't just say it was splendid or wonderful? Hannah eyed a piece of Italian apple tort, and was about to succumb to temptation when she remembered how tight the tights of her elf costume had been. I'm sure you could have used a different word, but I think you wanted to go for tight tights. Trying to decide, Mike asked, causing her to jump. Also, if you want to eat it. Stop worrying about your weight. I'm about to grab one of these hair sticks I've been working on and stab you with them. They're sharp and pointy, too, because I haven't sanded down the points yet. Trying to resist, Hannah corrected him. How do you do that anyway? Do what? Sneak up on people. We learned it in cop school. Or you just be really stealthy. Mike flashed her a grin that made her stomach do a little flip-flop. If someone conducted a poll of the single, divorced, and widowed women in Lake Eden, Minnesota, Mike Kingston, chief detective at the Winneneta County Sheriff's Department, would be a shoo-in for most. As many of you know, I'm not all that great with spelling and words and things, but how would you spell shoo-in? Because here it's spelled SHOO-IN. If it was me, I would spell it like a shoe that you wear on your foot, -in, or even just shoe space in, or maybe even as one word. Is that how you actually spell that? With SHOO? Would be a shoo-in for most desirable husband. Too bad you took off your costume. I thought you looked cute in it. Hannah stared at him for a minute in utter disbelief, and then she said, I think the county pays for that. Pays for what? Eye surgery. I understand they're doing wonders with lasers now. Mike laughed so loudly several guests at the buffet turned to look at him. Very funny, Hannah, but I really did think you looked cute. If you're not going to have a slice of that apple thing, do you want to dance? Did she want to dance? Shouldn't that be, italicized? Hannah ranked that question right up there with, do you want to breathe? Did she want Mike to put his arms around her and hold her close? Did she want to look up at him and realize that their lips were only inches apart? Did he even have to ask? Yes! It's a simple question. Do you want to dance or not? If you don't know about the boyfriend status thing, ask him. I'm sure he'll happily answer you. Hannah, Mike prompted, and Hannah came out of her musings to realize that he was holding down his arm. Thanks, Mike. I love to dance. Or you could just say, I would love to dance with you. Or just, I would love to. She said quickly, accepting his arm and walking with him to the dance floor. Dancing with Mike must have broken the ice, because once the last notes of music faded away, Norman appeared to claim her for the next dance. After that, Andrea's husband, Sheriff Bill Todd, piloted her around the floor. Then there was a series of local men, one right after the other, including Corey Reynolds, Mayor Bascom, Doc Knight, Reverend Cudson, her host Dick Laughlin, and the town druggist John Walker. I'm not moving for at least 10 minutes, she declared, sinking into a chair at the table she was sharing with her sisters. She slipped off her shoes and wiggled her feet, hoping that the feeling would eventually return to her toes. Feet hurt from all that dancing? Andrea asked her. No shit. Sure do. And skipping in those pointy-toed elf shoes didn't help either. She glanced around and didn't spot Bill. Lonnie Murphy, one of Bill's deputies and Michelle's date for the evening, was nowhere in sight either. Where are Bill and Lonnie? Lonnie's dancing with his mother. Dad's outside fixing a car, Michelle explained. And Bill's dancing with Barbara Donnelly. Andrea named the head secretary at the sheriff's station. I'm so glad she's not married. Okay, why? Michelle and Hannah exchanged a "Did you understand that?" glance, immediately followed by a "Not me" shrug. Whatever that's supposed to mean. Okay, all right, Hannah caved in and turned to Andrea. Why are you glad Barbara's not married? Because then her husband would ask me to dance, and I have to do it to be polite, and I'm too tired to dance. I made 4 batches of whippersnappers this afternoon. Hannah stared at her sister in utter amazement. When most women talked about batches, they were referring to cookies, brownies, muffins, or some type of baked goods. Surely Andrea had another explanation. As far as Hannah knew, her sister didn't even know how to turn on her oven, much less mix up a batch of anything and bake it. I thought she just sucked at it. Now suddenly she doesn't know how to cook? I suck at cooking, but I can use my oven and the microwave and the stove. Tracy has her dance class Christmas party tomorrow, and I promised Danielle I'd make enough for everybody. Most of the other mothers are bringing refreshments too. There was total silence while Hannah and Michelle digested that information. Refreshments meant food, and both of them knew that Andrea's only culinary skill was heating water in the microwave for instant coffee or jello. Then why doesn't she make that jello cake thing she made last book? What's the matter? Andrea asked, realizing at last their sisters were perfectly silent. We're wondering what, whippersnappers are, Michelle explained. Knowing full well she can't cook worth shit and was pretty much okay with this fact last book, we're suddenly not this book? They're cookies. You baked cookies? Both Michelle and Hannah exclaimed in unison. Yes, I did. And they were so easy. Carly Super emailed me with the recipe. You remember Carly, don't you? She coached the cheerleading squad. I remember, Hannah said, her mind flying through dire possibilities. Perhaps through some miracle Andrea had managed to mix up and bake several batches of cookies, but they couldn't possibly be good. Of course she couldn't say that without hurting her sister's feelings, which didn't bother you the last book from what I remember. And Andrea looked very proud of her accomplishment. Well, I would too, even if they turned out to be shit. I mean, that's a lot of hard work. It would be kinder to pretend that everything was fine, at least until she found out more. I've never heard of whippersnappers before, except to call kids that. She commented, fishing for information. What kind of cookie are they? I made lemon. Carly said you could make any flavor, and Tracy really likes lemon. Lemon's good. Hannah gave a quick smile, but she felt more like groaning. Lemon cookies usually called for lemon zest, and she was almost positive Andrea had never heard of it. How do you know this? Why don't you just ask her to give you the recipe and look it over? Did you have to go out and buy a zester? Michelle asked the question, and Hannah turned to give her a quick nod. She was willing to bet that they were on the same page. What's a zester? That answered that question. Hannah gave a little moan before she responded. Or you could have just left that out and just said, Hannah gave a little moan before she responded. A zester is like a grater for lemon peel, she explained. Why would I need that? There's no lemon peel in Carly's recipe. No lemon zest either? Hannah quizzed her, trying to cover all the bases. No. What does lemon zest do? It makes things taste really lemony. Michelle answered her. Well, I didn't need any zest because my whippersnappers taste nice and lemony without it. Is that a word? Yes, zest is the yellow part of the lemon peel. Hannah told her. Not that. I was talking about lemony. Is lemony a word? Because this is something you want to bring up in the middle of your book. What point does this serve to the rest of the story? I mean, this is having the same problem now that the first book had. If it's not, it should be. Hannah settled that query and moved on toward her objective. Did Michelle and I drop in at Tracy's party? Oh, if Michelle and I dropped in at Tracy's party, can we taste your cookies? Sure, but you don't have to wait until then. Just give me a ride home and we'll have some. Bethy? I think that's supposed to be Bethy. Bethie. Caught a little cold and I want to check in on her. Good idea. I guess that was her baby from the last book. Hannah said, giving her sister an approving nod. Andrea had been a nervous first-time mom with Tracy, reading every baby care book she could get her hands on, and trying to follow everyone's advice. Of course, that was impossible, but Andrea still felt like a failure as a mother whenever Tracy cried. Finally, in desperation, she'd gone back to work as a real estate agent and hired the best nanny in Lake Eden, Grandma McCann, to take care of Tracy. Won't Bill mind if you leave? Michelle asked her. No, he's already danced with me twice, and that's all the time he has for me tonight. He's got 15 ladies to go. 15 ladies? Hannah asked, glancing at Michelle, who looked every bit as puzzled as she felt. I asked Sally for an advance copy of the guest list, and Bill and I made up our game plan last night. A sheriff has certain obligations, you know, especially if he wants to serve more than one term. Bill has to play politics and dance with all the important women here. Are you talking about women who are married to important men? Michelle asked, frowning a bit. Not necessarily. Rose McDermott is on Bill's list. You might not think she's important, but a lot of local people go into the cafe. If Rose likes Bill and thinks he's doing a good job, she'll mention it, and that can influence a lot of people when they go to the polls. 'Cause now we have to talk about politicking. 'Cause did you know the police have their own politics to go through? Did you know that? You didn't? Well, now you're learning about it, even though you don't really give two shits. Is this important to the plot? Probably not. You're right. Michelle looked thoughtful. Or she said thoughtfully. Whatever. And then there's Bertie Strub. She's not shy about telling her customers down at the Cut and Curl who they should vote for. Hannah was amused. The next election for county sheriff was over 3 years away. So you're already launching Bill's campaign? It's never too early to play politics, apparently. Andrea glanced around the room and spotted her husband deep in conversation with Mayor Bascom. Just let me tell Bill I'm leaving, and we can go. Can I go with you? Michelle asked. Then when Andrea had left. Sure, but I thought Lenny was bringing you back to my place. He was, but he's pulling a late shift, and I'll say blah, blah. He was, but he's pulling a late shift, and it'll save him a trip. If you go with us, you're going to have to taste Andrea's cookies, Hannah warned. I know, but my nose is all stuffed up, and I won't be able to taste much. I'll just chew and swallow, and then I'll tell her how delicious they are. If you're sick, why aren't we only hearing about this now? Hannah wished that she had a similar ailment, hoping she'd be able to lie convincingly. Praising Andrea's cookies would constitute a lot more than a little white lie, but it would make her sister very happy. I thought everybody was okay with knowing that her cooking was shit in the last book. Why is it so suddenly different now? Was that just my impression? It smells like Christmas trees out here, Andrea said, taking a deep breath and expelling it in a cloud of white vapor. That's because we're walking past a whole grove of blue spruce, Hannah told her. They walked in silence for a moment, and then Andrea held out her gloved hand. It's snowing again. I just love knowing that every snowflake is different. In case you didn't know that, now you do. We learned it in school. I would hope so. They called it one of nature's miracles because no two are alike. No, they probably wouldn't use that phrase because it would make religious parents and non-religious parents upset. That's what they thought back then, Hannah said. But then John Nielsen, a cloud physicist from Kyoto, Japan, found that it's probably not true for the smaller crystals, the ones that barely develop beyond the prism stage. Just so you know, more facts shoving in your face. There was another long silence. Hannah was about to tell them more about this physicist, I guess, from Japan, when Michelle almost stumbled over a drift of snow on the walkway. Careful, Hannah warned, and Michelle stopped walking. Let's just stand here for a minute and look at the stars. It feels like you can reach out and touch them. They're so huge tonight. They weren't like this last night when Mother had us over for dinner. Because you'd randomly just do that instead of get in a car or something and go home. That's because it's darker out here, Hannah explained. Lake Eden has streetlights on every corner, and there are lights in all the houses. If you combine the lumens from the old-fashioned globe streetlights Dick and Sally put in on this walkway, and add the lights they have at the end, it doesn't add up to a fraction of the output of a single arc light in the parking lot at Jordan High. Because I really need to know this shit. How is it important? It doesn't make you look smart. It makes you look like you're just an exposition bomb. Which is exactly what's going on here. I'm making a card for that. It's going to be called the Exposition Bomb. Both Michelle and Andrea turned to look at her, and Hannah immediately realized her mistake. She was offering science textbooks when what they wanted was poetry. Of course, maybe it's not true, she said, trying to ameliorate the damage. Ameliorate? What the fuck is ameliorate? Also, why would you say maybe it's not true? Who gives a shit? We're looking at fucking gases of light in the nighttime sky. It's cool when you look up at the sky in the country in winter. Because it's really pretty. Even though it's fucking cold. Maybe what's not true? Andrea asked, and Hannah could tell she was still upset about the snowflakes. Why would she give a shit? I'd be like, oh, that's neat. I didn't really need to know that, but okay, cool. All of it, but let's take the snow crystals first. That same cloud scientist compared the number of possible snowflake shapes with the number of atoms in the universe. It would be impossible for scientists to examine them all. So he really doesn't know. Andrea looked very relieved. It's just a theory, right? Why are you bullshitting now? I don't get it. I'm like, what was wrong with anything she said? Why do we have to go back on it now and just be like, oh, but it ruins the magic? No! I know how shit works. That's cool. I'm gonna stare at snowflakes now, falling from the sky, because that's neat. Sciencey shit later. I'm looking at snowflakes now. That's right. How about the stars? Michelle asked. Hannah stuffed her gloved hands in her pockets. They could be bigger tonight, she said, crossing her fingers. It's not an absolute certainty. Stars don't increase in size from what I understand. They don't. I think they probably, well, I was going to say decrease, but it'd be more likely they would either implode or possibly even explode. I don't know that much about science and stars and all that stuff. You'd have to ask somebody who actually studied that stuff. It's not an absolute certainty. I like to think the stars and the moon react to us when we watch them. That makes the night magical, even though that is not how shit works, and you fucking know this, 'cause you went to fucking school and had an education. This drew smiles from both of her sisters, and Hannah relaxed a bit, because they were gonna yell and scream at you for talking about sciencey stuff, and now you have to backpedal and make it sound all mushy and bullshit. I don't get this. She had to remember to curb her impulse to be realistic and practical when their sisters wanted whimsy and romance. It's a fucking snowflake, and there are stars in the sky. Which, how do you see the stars in the sky if it's snowing, because then it'd be all cloudy and shit? This is stupid. This is outright stupid, and illogical and impractical. If I want poetry, I'll grab some poetry and start reading it. Maybe some Edgar Allan Poe. I'd feel better by reading Hit and the Pendulum again. Oh, Michelle stumbled again. I just stepped on something slippery, she said. What? Hannah asked. I don't know. Hold on a second. Hannah drew a tiny flashlight from her pocket, 'cause she just happened to have a flashlight in there. Norman gave this to me the last time I dropped my keys in the snow, because you have to explain why you have a flashlight in your pocketbook. She switched on the light and trained the beam on the walkway. You were right here and you slipped on this. What is it? Michelle asked. A miniature candy cane wrapped in plastic. Hannah held it up so both of them can see it. Or you could just say, hey, it's a mini candy cane in its package. I don't know why you have to be so literal. Hannah held it up so both of them could see it. It's one of Wayne Bergstorm's, and he must have dropped it on his way to the parking lot. You seem pretty happy about finding it, Michelle commented, reacting to the smile, reacting to the smile on her older sister's face. Why would she be happy about it? I definitely wouldn't put that in any cookies or anything now. It's been on the ground. I don't care that it's still wrapped in plastic. Ew. I am. I know it's mean of me, but I'm glad he lost it. I wanted to keep the leftover candy canes to try out a new cookie recipe, but he told me he wanted them all back for his next Santa appearance. Because owning a bakery would mean you wouldn't have your own, or you couldn't stop by a fucking store and buy a couple of boxes. Andrea just shook her head. Wayne's such a tightwad. It's not like he doesn't have more. What does it fucking matter? They're his. They're for the kids. Why are you trying to take them? There's nothing wrong with what he said he wanted to do. You guys are freaking out over nothing but bullshit. And they probably cost him practically nothing. What were you going to use them for? She just said she's making fucking cookies. Chocolate candy cane cookies. And now I can't make them until I buy some candy canes. You own a fucking bakery. You have your own store. You guys are outside right now. Just stop by the local Dollar General. Or whatever the fuck you have in Minnesota that happens to be a dollar store. And buy some. It's not that big of a deal. Buy some peppermint sticks. Peppermint chocolate. Whatever. Both Andrea and Michelle gave little groans of dismay, and Hannah was gratified. If Wayne dropped one, he probably dropped more, especially if he's got a hole in his pocket. Let's keep looking. I don't think it's snowed enough to completely cover them. Why? I wouldn't bother with it. They're on the ground now. Are you going to use them for the cookies? Michelle wanted to know. I hope not, because you're a fucking retard if you do, and they should shut your store down. No, I'll buy my own. Then why fucking bother? I just think it would be really funny if we collected them all and gave them back to Wayne at the store tomorrow. Why? He shouldn't give any of that to the kids now that they've been on the ground. I don't care that they're wrapped in plastic. That's nasty. Here's one, Michelle called out, spotting another. Cellophane-wrapped candy at the side of the pathway. It looks like he's dropping one every 10 feet or so. This is fun, Andrea commented, rushing ahead to pick up a candy cane. It's like Hansel and Gretel, except there aren't any birds or breadcrumbs. Or like gingerbread houses with witches in them, which might put some sense into your head if there was. The walk to the parking lot had turned into a game, each sister trying to find the next candy cane. They had about a dozen when the trail of candy canes abruptly stopped. Because, this is what 30-year-old women would do with their spare time. What happened, Andrea, the current holder of Hannah's miniature flashlight, spread the light around in a circle. Why wouldn't you say turn the light around in a circle? Or wave the light around in a circle? We haven't found anything for over 10 yards. How do you know it's over 10 yards? Michelle asked. Maybe he got into his car and left. He has to been parked somewhere. Believe me, I know how far you have to go for a first down. Because that makes fucking sense. Bill used to play football, remember? Again, what the fuck does that have to do with anything? Neither Hannah nor Michelle voiced any argument to that, because that was stupid. Not only had Bill been the best quarterback in the whole country, supposedly, Andrea had been the head cheerleader at Jordan High. Do you think Wayne ran out of candy canes? Michelle asked Hannah. I don't think so. The basket was big, and it was over half full when Wayne told me to stuff the candies in his Santa suit pocket. The hole in his pocket didn't mend itself, Andrea pointed out. Right, Wayne must have left the walkway for some reason. Let's check the sides of the path. If we can find the point where Wayne veered off, we'll start finding candy canes again. Or maybe he got into a car and left, guys. Michelle led them back to the point where she'd found the last candy cane. This is the place, she said, pointing down to the snowy walkway. Where do we look now? You and Andrea check your side of the path. If you don't find anything, come back and give me the flashlight so I can check my side. If Wayne is still leaking candy canes, we'll find them. Why wouldn't he be leaking candy canes? Andrea wanted to know. Because people leak candy canes. Don't you know? Didn't we fucking say he probably had a hole in his pocket and they're falling out? Not that hard. Why do you have to reiterate this shit? Are you worried about your word count? Being a novella, I don't think you have anything to really worry about, because there are 2 other books and recipes in this thing to bulk up your book. I could be wrong about how many are left. Or maybe he noticed that they were falling out and he put them in another pocket. Hannah waited well, you could have said that in a different way and much sooner. Hannah waited while Andrea and Michelle checked their side of the walkway and came back. Your turn, Andrea said, handing her the flashlight. We'll wait right here while you check, for some reason, instead of going with you to look. Hannah moved forward with the flashlight, sweeping sweeping the beam over the snow. She was about to give up and admit defeat when she spotted 4 candy canes near the edge of the path. I've got some, she called out, and her sisters hurried over. Why are there so many here? Michelle asked, bending down to pick them up. It looks like they all fell out at once. Maybe he slipped, Hannah theorized. Or maybe he got tired of holding his candy over the hole and decided it wasn't worth it, Andrea added. her take on it. I don't think he'd do that, though. Why not? Michelle asked her. Because he's too cheap, so you guys say. Every time he dropped one, he'd be adding up how much it cost him. Mother used to say that Wayne had the first nickel he ever made. Why wouldn't you guys say Mom used to say? I remember that, Michelle said with a laugh. She told me Wayne pinched it so hard the buffalo squeaked and ran away. Because it was a buffalo nickel. Did you guys know that? It's a buffalo nickel. You guys had buffalo nickels growing up, didn't you? Look at this. Hannah pointed to another candy cane a foot or so away. The trail picks up again here and keeps going. The three sisters followed the candy cane trail to the bank of hard-packed snow the plow had left when Dick had cleared the inn's parking lot after the last snowfall. Behind it, and a few feet back, was another bank of snow and ice, rising even higher than the first. By the end of the snowy winter, there would be several banks lining the perimeter of the lot. When one berm, I think you would want to use the term bank again, but okay. By the way, I don't know what a berm is. I assume it makes sense to people who deal with cleaning snow off roadways. When the berm got too high for the snowplow blade to reach and dump, Dick started another snowbank in front of it. I see candy canes going all the way up that snowbank, Michelle said, illuminating them with Hannah's flashlight. I wonder why Wayne climbed way up there. There's only one way to find out, Hannah told her. Not me, Andrea pointed down at her high-heeled boots. That's hard-packed snow, and these boots were expensive. I could break off a heel. Then why the fuck are you wearing them? Just get normal boots or shoes. I can go with you, Michelle offered. No way. Mother just bought you those suede boots, and they're going to get ruined. Then why are you wearing them out in the snow if they're going to get ruined? Also, call your mother Mom. Or Mama. It's okay, I don't really mind. No, but Mother will, and if Mother minds, I'll never hear the end of it. Just stay here with Andrea, and I'll take a quick peek. Hannah dug in with her heels, because it's okay for her to go up that shit in heels, and not have to worry about her shoes breaking because, and started to climb up the bank of snow. It was a good 8 feet tall with fairly steep, slick sides, and the ascent wasn't easy. She slipped a couple of times, but she kept going until she pulled herself up on the top. She opened her mouth to make a joke about being king of the hill, a reference to the children's game they played in the winter every recess in grade school, because I needed to know that. But then she saw what was on the other side, and the joke died a quick death on her lips. There was a figure spread eagle on the snow at the base of the berm. It was Wayne Bergstorm, and he obviously been pushed. Making snow angels wasn't in his repertoire. How do you know this? Anything there? Michelle's voice floated up to her, and Hannah swallowed with difficulty. She took a deep breath, expelled it in a cloud of light, and croaked out one shaky word. Yes. You sound really funny, Andrea commented. Are you all out of breath? Hannah knew she wasn't the one who was out of breath. Wayne Bergstorm was, but she couldn't quite manage to say anything that sarcastic. Hannah? Michelle sounded worried. Are you okay? I'm okay. Hannah choked out the words and took another deep breath. Andrea was right. The air did smell like Christmas trees. The stars and the moon seemed bigger, too, illuminating the figure at the bottom of the first side of the snowbank in an intensely cold blue light. Everyone said you couldn't see color at night, but Hannah's mind filled in the colors. He was wearing red velvet and white fur, and there were candy canes scattered all around him. Hannah? Andrea asked again, and Hannah knew she had to say more. She didn't want her sisters to be so worried about her they try to climb the berm and see what she was seeing. Santa's dead, she said, seemingly capable of only 2-word responses. Why would you say Santa is dead? Why not just say Wayne's dead? You mean Wayne? Andrea asked. Right. because I would just say yeah or yes. Hannah brushed the snowflakes, no two alike, from her sleeve, because I needed to mention that again. And that seemed to do the trick, because the dam broke and the words rushed out. Go back to the inn and get Bill and Lonnie. I'll stay and guard the crime scene until they get here. Which translates to, I'm gonna nose about while you guys are gone. Chapter 3. He is just the sweetest kitty in the world, Andrea crooned, stretching Moishi under the chin. The moment they'd enter Hannah's living room, the 20-something-pound orange and white cat that Hannah had found shivering on her doorstep over 2 years ago had made a beeline for Andrea and climbed up in her lap. Hannah just smiled, deciding not to burst her sister's bubble, and mentioned the fact that she was holding a canister of salmon-flavored treats that Moishi adored, and doling them out every time he nudged her with his head. By tacit agreement, they hadn't discussed Wayne Bergstorm's death. It didn't seem to be an appropriate topic of conversation when they stopped by to check on Bethy and Tracy, and pick up the plate of cookies Andrea wanted them to try. Hannah had pulled Grandma McCann aside to fill her in, but the three sisters hadn't mentioned Wayne's name on the trip to Hannah's condo complex, either. Perhaps it was simply an attempt at avoidance. If they didn't mention it, it might go away. Or perhaps it was a delaying tactic, 'cause we're going to use tactic again, and all three of them wanted to enjoy their time together for a little while longer before discussing such a gruesome topic. Hannah figured they'd have coffee first. A little fortification with a mug of Swedish plasma. Is that alcohol? I've never heard that. Was in order while they tasted Andrea's cookies. And then they'd talk about Wayne Bergstorm and the distressing sight she'd seen from the top of the snowbank. The coffee should be ready now, Hannah said, craning her neck to see if the café was full. Is that a fancy word for the glass canister that the coffee goes in when it's making? It wasn't. She glanced at the plate of cookies Andrea had baked. The cookies were pretty, a nice rich yellow, with powdered sugar on the tops. They looked good, but looks didn't count for everything when it came to baked goods. Or anything, really. I hope Bill isn't late, Andrea said, frowning slightly. He told me he thought they'd be here by midnight to take our statements, but something could happen to delay them. If he's really late, you can catch a nap on the couch, Hannah told her. Or share the guest room with me, Michelle offered. It's a king-sized bed. Andrea shook her head. I don't think I could sleep, not after what I saw tonight. What who saw? Hannah begged to differ. You didn't see anything. Technically no, but considering you guys discovered a dead body, anybody would be disturbed by that, whether they actually saw the corpse or not. No, but you told me about it, and I have a very active imagination. There's something really awful about Santa being dead. Wayne being dead, Michelle corrected her. Let's not forget Hannah said Santa is dead. It's her fault if in her sister's mind she has implanted the thought of Santa being dead. Don't think of him as Santa, and it won't seem so bad. Think of him as that old skin flint department store owner who wouldn't approve you for Bergstorm's credit card, so you could charge that luggage you wanted for your honeymoon. Andrea blinked. You're right, and that does help. Not that he deserved to die, but I really didn't like Wayne at all. She turned to Hannah. Do you think that's really bad of me? No. You realize that, yeah, he was a douchebag, but it's sad that he's dead now. I feel the same way about a lot of people I hear that die. I'm like, well, yeah, they're dead, and I'm sorry about that, but I'm not gonna miss them. And I think that's the greater shame of the whole thing is I'm not going to miss them. Not really. As far as I know, there's no rule of etiquette that says you have to like somebody just because they're dead. If you didn't like them alive, you probably won't like them after they're dead, either." She paused to crane her neck again, and gave a sigh of satisfaction. "The coffee's ready. I'll go get it, and then taste your cookies." "Oh!" Andrea looked very nervous. "I really hope you like them. They're the first cookies I've ever made by myself." Hannah made quick work of gathering what they needed in the kitchen. The topic of Wayne's death had come up earlier than she expected. When she came back with a tray containing 3 mugs of coffee and cream and sugar for Andrea, she set it down in the center of the table and reached for one of Andrea's cookies before she could take the coward's way out and claim that she was too full from Sally's Christmas party buffet. Or, the fact that you saw a dead person and that might have upset your stomach. "After I saw somebody dead, I don't think I'd be in the mood for eating. Or at least a whole lot." Hannah was well aware that both Andrea and Michelle were watching her like hawks as she chewed, and swallowed, and smiled. "Good," she said, doing her best not to sound too surprised. "I like these, Andrea." "Really?" "Yes," Hannah said, and took another bite. "How about you, Michelle?" Michelle gave her the same look Hannah imagined a prisoner being led to the gallows would wear. But she managed to smile as she obediently took a cookie and bit into it. There was a moment of silence, and then an expression of total surprise crossed her face. "These are good, Andrea." "Well, I would hope so, if she's actually following directions that someone gave her and not trying to blindly think of what cookies might need on her own. She should be all right. I mean, this is why there are pre-made mixes of cakes, brownies, cookies, all that shit. It's for people who don't know how to make things on their own." "Well, don't look so shocked." Andrea gave a little giggle. "Carly told me that everybody in her family liked them." "They're wonderful," Hannah said, finishing her first cookie and reaching for another. "And you actually made them all by yourself?" "Well," Andrea faltered a bit, and then she shook her head. "Not exactly." "What does that mean?" Michelle wanted to know. "I didn't do it entirely by myself. Grandma McCann showed me how to preheat the oven and put them on the cookie sheets, but that was only for the first couple of times. After that, I did it by myself." Even though they weren't an overly affectionate family, Hannah couldn't help it. She reached out to give her sister a hug. "Good for you! You are going to give me the recipe, or is this a big secret?" "It's not a secret, and it's really easy. They take only 4 ingredients." "You're kidding!" Hannah was amazed. The cookies had a light but complex lemon flavor. They were soft and a bit chewy inside, and the outside was almost crunchy. Andrea went on. "I think that's why Carly sent me the recipe. She remembers the bake sales the cheerleaders used to have to raise money for uniforms." Hannah remembered them, too, when she discovered that Andrea and her friend Janie Burkholtz were buying Twinkies at the Lake Eden Red Owl to sell at the fundraising bake sales. She started baking homemade cookies for them. "What are the 4 ingredients?" Michelle asked. "A package of lemon cake mix, 2 cups of Cool Whip, an egg, and powdered sugar." "Lemon cake mix, of course!" Hannah felt like rapping the side of her head with her knuckles for being so dense. Andrea had told them she hadn't used zest or lemon juice, but the cookies were still lemony. The flavor had to come from somewhere, and making cookies from lemon cake mix should have occurred to her. "Well, not really. There are probably other things you can put in there to be lemon flavored. I mean, I don't know much about cooking, but that's all there is," Andrea continued. "Just the 4 ingredients. Any more and I probably couldn't have done it." "Well, you did very well," Hannah told her, pouring them all more coffee. "Thanks. I'm going to try chocolate next. Maybe I could even mix in a few of those tiny chocolate chips. That might be good." Hannah just stared at her sister. This was a whole new side of Andrea she'd never seen before. Well, when your family is cooking inclined, even if you suck at cooking, you want to try and cook and make different things. Hannah just stared at her sister. This was a whole new side of Andrea she'd never seen before. "And then I was thinking of doing white cake mix with some kind of cut-up fruit like cherries or apricots." "Why are you staring at me like that?" Because that's how great recipes are developed. You start with something basic and branch out. Sometimes it can be as simple as running out of one ingredient and substituting something else. Hannah passed the plate of cookies to Michelle. We've got 3 left, 1 for each of us, and then we're going to get down to business. You're going to figure out who killed Wayne? Andrea asked, taking her cookie and making short work of it. I don't even know if anyone did yet, Hannah reminded her. It was night. He was at the bottom of the berm, and it was at least 8 feet above him. I guess it's possible he slipped and broke his neck. But why was he up there in the first place? Michelle asked. He could have climbed up to enjoy the view, Andrea suggested. What was it like up there? It wasn't what I'd call a scenic vista. The only thing I could see from the top was the snowbank behind it, and the cars in the parking lot. Okay, Michelle gave a quick nod. That maybe he had to, and he didn't want to walk all the way back to the inn. So he climbed up a slippery 8-foot bank instead of just ducking behind a handy tree, Hannah asked her. Never mind, it was a dumb idea, Michelle admitted. Wait a second. Andrea looked thoughtful. Maybe he didn't climb up there. Maybe somebody dragged him up there and pushed him down the other side to kill him. Why go to all that trouble when you could just shoot him, or stab him, or club him to death right there in the path? Hannah asked the pertinent question. Just so you know, it was an important question for her to ask. Because the killer was afraid somebody might come along and catch him? Or, I don't know. Let me find out if it was an accident. Bill should know by now. You're going to call Bill? Michelle asked as Andrea took her cell phone out of her purse. No, I'm calling Sally. Sally at the inn? Michelle followed up with another question. Clearly, but thank you for telling me. That's right. She can tell me if Vonnie Blair's still there at the party. Doc Knight's secretary, Hannah said, beginning to get an inkling of what her sister was doing. And if Vonnie's still there, it's probably not murder. Is that right? You got it. As Andrea punched in the number, Michelle turned to Hannah. Maybe you got it, but I didn't get it. It's simple. If Doc Knight thinks it's murder, Bill will ask him to rush the autopsy. Doc knows how important it is, and he'll do it right away. And since Doc has such awful handwriting, he'll call Vonnie on her cell phone and ask her to come out to the hospital to type up the transcript of the autopsy tonight. Michelle's puzzled expression smoothed out, and she looked very impressed. Wow, Andrea is devious. She gets it from Mother, who we should be calling Mom. Hannah explained. Mother can think of the most roundabout ways to get the latest gossip. Thanks, Sally, Andrea said, and snapped her cell phone shut. And then she looked over at them. It's murder. Vonnie left with the paramedics who transported Wayne to the hospital. Doc Knight must have been able to tell right away. As usual, Andrea was the scribe. Not only did she have good organizational skills, she also had the neatest handwriting of the 3 sisters. Michelle's had deteriorated when she'd gone off to college. Well, that's prone to happen considering how much you actually have to write. After 2 years at McAllister, her notes were cryptic, filled with abbreviations that only she could decipher. Yeah, because you have to take a shit ton of notes. Hannah, on the other hand, tended to print whenever she wrote something she hoped to read later. Here you go, a brand new Stento notebook. Hannah handed her sister one from the stash of notebooks she kept in every room. 'Cause you would do that. Do you need a pen? I have one. Andrea reached in her purse and pulled out what Hannah termed a dress pin, since the barrel was gold and studded with sparkling white stones. Pretty fancy, Michelle commented, leaning closer to gaze at the pin. Are those rhinestones or diamonds? I'm pretty sure they're rhinestones. It was a present from a client, and the house he bought was a fixer-upper. Andrea flipped to the first blank page and wrote Wayne Bergstorm's name on the top. We don't know the time of death or the method. What do you want me to write down? We could list the time I found him, Hannah suggested, but I didn't look at my watch. I did, Michelle said. When you said Santa's dead, I pressed the button to light the time, and it said 10:22. Because you would do that. Though I guess if you guys regularly solve murders, maybe you would. I don't know. But then again, when Mom died, the only thing on my mind was to go and find out what time it was. Weird things will pop into your head when somebody dies, apparently. Andrea started to write it down, but Michelle grabbed her hand. Put down 10:17, she said. Wait a second, Hannah was confused. I thought you said you looked at your watch and it was 10:22. That's right, but I always set my watch 5 minutes ahead. It keeps me from being late to class. How does it keep you from being late to class if you know your watch is 5 minutes ahead? Hannah asked her. I set the clock in the kitchen 5 minutes fast. Usually it doesn't occur to me that's 5 minutes fast, even though if somebody asks me and I'm telling them what the time is, I'll let them know that it's fast by so many minutes. Which it doesn't really matter anyway because it becomes fast on its own. I don't know how that happens. I need a new microwave. It's simple. If I start counting on that extra 5 minutes, I set my watch 10 minutes ahead and psych myself out. It doesn't make any sense because, whatever, I'm trying to make sense out of something that's dumb. All was silent as Hannah digested that. It seemed her youngest sibling hadn't inherited the logic gene. Apparently. I was just saying that didn't make any sense. Okay, 10:17, Andrea jotted it down. Do we know what time Wayne left for the parking lot? 10 after 8, Hannah responded. Are you sure your watch isn't 5 or 10 minutes fast? Andrea teased her. I didn't look at my watch. I glanced at the clock in Sally's kitchen as Wayne set out the back door. We can check it to make sure it's accurate. Andrea flipped to another page and started a list of things they had to do. Got it. We'll run out to the inn and check Sally's kitchen clock tomorrow. That means Wayne was killed between 8:10 and 10:17. Michelle pointed out. Well, no shit, Sherlock, but I guess that is something to reiterate. That's a window of just a little over 2 hours. When we go out tomorrow, let's see how long it takes to walk from Sally's kitchen to that berm, Hannah suggested, assuming the cops will let you. Even if you're poking along, taking your time, it can't be more than 5 minutes. Andrea made another note. Got it, she said. If you're right, it means that Wayne was probably killed around 8:15 or 8:20. Unless he stopped to talk to someone on the path, Michelle argued. You know how people are when they meet each other at a party. They stop and talk for a while. He could have met up with his killer after he talked to somebody. Good point, Hannah said. We should get a guest list from Sally and check to see if anyone at the party met Wayne on the walkway. Merrily winking rhinestones, or diamonds, or whatever they were, Andrea's pen flew across the page. 'Cause I needed to know they were winking at you. Wouldn't glittering be a more accurate term than winking? It's a couple of degrees above freezing tonight. If you were dressed for the weather, you could stand there and talk for 5 or 10 minutes without getting cold. Michelle nodded, but Wayne wasn't dressed for the weather. Hannah said he was wearing a Santa suit. She turned to Hannah. Do you think it was as heavy as a parka? I don't know. It looked heavy, especially with all that fur, but I didn't actually feel the material. They sell the same Santa suit at Bergstrom's, Michelle told him. I saw a whole rack of them when I was shopping for boots with Mother. We'll go out there and check. Andrea added another line to her to-do page. And then she let Moishi capture her pen and batted around for a moment. Mother! Hannah exclaimed. What about Mother? Her sisters chorused in perfect unison. When she calls me to read me the right act for finding another body, I'll ask her to go shopping at Bergston's and check out the Santa suits. It's her favorite store at the mall. And she'll be so pleased she's helping us solve Wayne's murder, she'll forget all about criticizing you, Michelle guessed. That's the general idea. It could work. Andrea offered her opinion. Mother's hard to distract, but a trip to Bergston's right before Christmas could do it. Well, at least we got to the mystery this time. I'm not as angry, really. There's still a lot of pointlessness, a lot of stuff we can skip over, more fact-giving, but it doesn't feel as bad as it did in Sugar Cookie Murder. I can give this book a thumbs up. I just don't want it to stall on all this stuff that we don't need to know and that we don't need to focus on. This is what I want to see in a murder mystery book, especially in this series, than Sugar Cookie Murder. I think the reason why, really, that this story is so faster paced and getting to the point as opposed to Sugar Cookie Murder is really that this book is technically a novella. There are two others in this book. And if I compare the two, Candy Cane Murder is just slightly, probably by 30 pages or so, bigger. I think that says a lot about how Miss Fluke writes, and that she needs to be edited down more in order for her stories to be better. If she cuts out a lot of the filler, we can get to the important things first. Like, did we really need chapter 2 to be mostly about them talking about cooking? No. 2/3 of chapter 2 is talking about cooking, when we really should be meeting perhaps some of the other people at the party and getting to know them so we can have our suspect pool. I can say at least the first story, which is by Joanne Fluke, The Candy Cane Murder, is at the moment a better read than The Sugar Cookie Murder. And if you want to pick this up and read it, you'll probably enjoy it yourself. I don't know about the other two stories in this book. If you want me to read them, I will, because they are also chapter-based. And I'll do the standard 1, 2, 3 chapters. But that's really all I have to say. Same complaints, really, from the first book, except because she has to make her story much shorter to fit into this tiny anthology of holiday stories. It just makes her story better. And I think that's really it, is that she just needs to cut out the filler she's forcing into her book. It's okay to have themed books. You can have, cooking books. You can have soap making books. You can have gardening books. You can have books where the detective just likes to eat food, and then all your titles are food parodies. But you really need to make sure that it's just an addition to. Your hobby shouldn't be the main focus of the book, unless you are specifically writing a cookbook or a gardening book or whatever. If you want to write a cookbook, go write a cookbook. You want to have people talking about cooking? Make a cooking show. But these types of things that aren't important to a story, such as murder mystery, need to be kept to a minimum. I suppose it comes to, what do I show and tell versus what I tell instead of show. There's that fine balance of what you need to say and what can just be glossed over. It takes a bit of fine-tuning. I would just tell you to write, and then set your work aside for a bit, and then come back to it a month, a few weeks later, and just start editing it. This is why NaNoWriMo is so great, because you spend a month just writing non-stop, and using any down days that you have to go back and look at your work and start editing it, so that way you can stay productive and stay immersed in your story, so that when you do feel inspired again, you can start writing again, but you've already got some editing done, and it's still in your head. When December comes, that's when you're editing your NaNoWriMo story. You're going through it from start to finish, and giving it a good, nice clean up. But that doesn't mean you're not writing anymore. sometimes you have to completely rewrite sections after you've finished your book, because the entire story you might have wrote in November, but you're going to be writing again in December, and maybe again in January. You have to sit down and edit it and rewrite. You have to have other people look at it to edit it and suggest things you should change or rewrite. It's not a 1-month process. It takes several months. So I think that's all I have to say about this. I'm Caleb, and this has been Red Knot. Thank you for listening. Bye!